Welcome to Mind and Life's President's Call. My name is Maggie Guggenheimer, and I'm Director of Advancement at Mind and Life. On behalf of the full team, we're so happy that you've joined us today. I want to start by recognizing and thanking the artists who generously shared music for our Zoom waiting room. Barbara Bogatin on cello, and our Summer Research Institute faculty member, Srinivas Reddy on sitar. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Music is one way many of us have found comfort and connection while adjusting to the big changes in our everyday lives, and while processing the loss and suffering felt by so many during the pandemic. As you'll hear today, Mind and Life is eager to show up fully and make a difference, to serve, to foster flourishing, and to partner with you and others to change our world. As an important part of this process, today we will share our new strategic vision with you and explore how our expanding work is even more important moving forward. Before I introduce our speakers, I want to share a few housekeeping items. First, of course, we're all at home, which for us means Charlottesville, Virginia. It also means you may hear some occasional background noise, and we'll be keeping our fingers crossed for reliable internet. If there happen to be some unexpected technical glitches today, we thank you in advance for your understanding and good humor. And of course, we imagine that most of you are tuning in from home as well. On that note, please know that both your video and your mic are disabled, so you can relax and not worry about being seen or heard by others on the call. And speaking of home, I see that we have folks joining the call from many places. From the chat box, I saw that we have folks from all over the US and Mexico, Germany, Canada, Poland, Slovenia. Welcome. And I know there are more of you from other places as well. We're so happy that you're with us. In fact, registrations for this call came in from 43 countries and 41 states in the US, which is an exciting reminder to us that there's global interest in Mind and Life's vision for the future. Before and after we present that vision, we'll join together in a brief reflective practice. After the closing reflection, we'll have about 10 minutes of Q&A to address a few of the questions that you shared with us through the registration form and also through the chat window today. So please keep your questions coming. If you have questions that we don't have time to address today, I hope you'll continue the conversation with us by email. And you can email president@mindandlife.org, which is information that we'll share again at the end of the call. Our presenters today are Susan Bauer-Wu and Wendy Hasenkamp. Susan Bauer-Wu has served as president of the Mind and Life Institute for 4.5 years. Throughout her career, she's held leadership, academic, and clinical roles in healthcare and higher education, with a focus on mind-body science and fostering resilience through contemplative approaches. She's the author of more than 80 scholarly articles and chapters, and a book for the lay public, Leaves Falling Gently, Living Fully with Serious and Life-Limiting Illness Through Mindfulness, Compassion, and Connectedness. These days, she spends her free time gardening and hiking the Blue Ridge with her husband and 2 dogs. Wendy Hasenkamp is Mind and Life Science Director. She has a PhD in neuroscience from Emory University, where she studied the brain's role in psychiatric disorders and how the brain works during meditation. Over her 8 years with Mind and Life, she's run dialogues with the Dalai Lama, Summer Research Institutes, and our grants programs. She's also edited Mind and Life's book, The Monastery and the Microscope. Her latest project is our new podcast featuring the frontiers of contemplative science, and I highly recommend it if you haven't heard it already. In Charlottesville since 2016, Wendy loves dancing, being outside, and tackling DIY projects on her house. Before we get started on the presentation, we'll come together in a brief reflective practice led by Mind and Life's program manager, Shankri Goldstein. Trained in the lineage of integral yoga, Shankri has spent years connecting to breath, body, strength, movement, and energy. She is a certified yoga of recovery instructor, an accessible yoga ambassador, and a founder of Shinsara Yoga Festival, the Black Female Farmers Network, and the Black Yogis of Virginia group. Shankri lives on a regenerative farm in Scottsville, Virginia, with her husband and more than 60 animals and livestock. And now I will pass it off to Shankri.
Thank you so much, Maggie. Om Shanti, peace and blessings and welcome. We're going to open today with a brief meditation. So in the beauty of this contemplative moment, please find yourself centered in a comfortable seated posture. Spine and neck can be elongated, shoulders relaxed and open. And if you're standing, please find the roots of your feet extending down and allow the palms to open and face forward to receive any energy that's coming in. And perhaps soften or close your eyes. And if you'd like to, you can place your left hand on your heart, and then maybe the right hand gently rests over the left hand. There's permission now for you to follow your natural breathing pattern with the eyes softened or closed, or gazing. And begin to feel the rhythm of your heart in this moment. Notice your heartbeat. Notice the thoughts that are flowing in this moment. And allow yourself to come back to the rhythm of your soul and perhaps your breath as you follow your heartbeat. And with each moment of acknowledging your breath, know that you are present fully in this moment. As you're becoming more connected with your physical body, begin to witness the thoughts that are arising. Allow yourself the freedom to explore and experience everything that you're feeling in your mind, your body, and your heart. Explore the peace or the grit of your mind. Everything is fully allowed to be present in this space, in this moment right now. There's freedom for you to acknowledge if there's any joy, fear, uncertainty, or any feeling that is coming up for you in this moment. And just greet that sensation with this question. How do you feel right now, in this moment? Allow this question to take you to deeper places in your mind. And as you listen to that answer of where you are right now in this moment, how do you feel? When you're ready, allow the eyes to flutter open. You can allow the hands to release from over the heart when they feel called, or maybe they want to stay there. And in this moment, we can begin to fully connect to all beings and all things.
Thank you so much, Shankri. Really, really appreciated that lovely reflection. And thank you, Maggie, for your opening words. You know, in Shankri's reflection, she asked the question of how do I feel right now, or how do we feel right now? And what immediately came to mind for me was connected. It is so heartwarming to see the chats come in and to see those of you that are here on this call. I'm really disappointed that we can't be together in person. I miss you, and it's just really, really awesome that we can just be here holding the space in this time right here, right now. So thanks so much for taking the time to join us. It really means a lot that you're here, that you care about mind and life and the work that we're doing. And I'm really delighted to share with you our vision for change. And this is an exploration of mind and life's expanding strategic vision, as well as our vision for humanity. And to come to this point, we turned inward in a very thoughtful strategic planning process
and we engaged many people in that process. We started well over a year and a half ago. We finished it in January. And we engaged our board members and steering council members, our fellows and supporters. And with these integrated input, we've come to this point today. So before I get started, I want to acknowledge the deeply challenging moment that we're all facing due to the pandemic. And this, we know, is an unprecedented crisis of our lifetime, and we're navigating tremendous uncertainty and loss. And along with the grief and amidst the physical isolation, we're also reminded of the preciousness of life and how we're deeply interconnected. And it's that interconnection and our shared humanity that we need most right now. And that's why Mind and Life is committed more than ever to move our work forward. So first I'd like to begin is to ground us a bit in Mind and Life's legacy, because our 33-year history is an important foundation for our next chapter. So the vision that sparked the creation of Mind and Life emerged from a series of private conversations beginning in the 1980s. And it culminated in 1987 with the first dialogue between His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Western scientists and scholars and other thought leaders. And it took place at His Holiness's home in Dharamsala, India. And the initial vision came from the recognition that the Dalai Lama is a really curious person. And he often says that if he wasn't a simple monk, that he would have been a scientist or an engineer. And I also just want to let you all know that His Holiness is doing well. He's safe, he's happy, he's healthy at his home in India. And over time, our founders realized the potential of such dialogues for social benefit. And they knew that science is a modern source of knowledge that can improve the lives for people on the planet. And they also knew that contemplative wisdom had its own influence for positive change in the world. So together they asked a simple but powerful question. What greater impact could both modes of inquiry, scientific and contemplative, have if they were combined? So those first conversations sparked a global collaboration between great thinkers with diverse perspectives, two major investigative traditions, modern science and Buddhist wisdom. And by bringing these powerful truths together, Mind and Life has helped usher in the entirely new interdisciplinary field of contemplative science, and also helped to see the modern mindfulness movement. And for the first 16 years, the Mind and Life's work focused on private dialogues and books. And we've had 13 Mind and Life books that have been published to date. And then in 2003, there was the first public meeting at MIT. And in 2004 was the first Mind and Life Summer Research Institute. And the following year, in 2005, were the first research grants that we gave to support research in new investigators, young investigators in meditation and other contemplative practices. And so our legacy and our way forward are centered around the amazing things that can happen when diverse perspectives come together. Next slide. So over the course of our 33-year history, I'm just going to share a few highlights of some of the work, transformation of the work that we've done. We've brought together well over 15,000 contemplatives, researchers, and change makers at our in-person convenings. And we've seen an exponential increase in scientific papers on meditation and mindfulness. And we've also been a valuable resource for the development of new, widely applied, evidence-based educational clinical programs. And I'll just share 2 examples with you. Both of these examples got started with Varela grants that were funded while they were in graduate school. So the first is Tish Jennings, and many of you may know Tish for her amazing work as it relates to mindfulness in education. And Tish developed and tested a mindfulness intervention for teachers in K-12 education and found significant improvements in resilience of teachers as well as in student academic outcomes. And that program has been implemented in schools all around the country. The second example I want to share is Eric Garland, and Eric is based in Utah at the University of Utah. He's a clinical scientist, and he's developed and tested an intervention, a mindfulness intervention for addiction, for people recovering from addiction. And that program also has been applied to hospitals and clinics all over the country. So we've seen an incredible follow-on effect of our grant making for promising young investigators who've gone on to become prominent investigators in the field. And as a result of Mind and Life's funding, we've seen a conservative estimate of $110 million in follow-on funding. And so that's over a 25-fold return on investment. So beyond the ripple effects we've seen across science, education, and healthcare, Mind and Life's work has helped spark an even wider transformational shift across society as a whole. We also know that some of this work has been oversimplified and even hyped. But nonetheless, there's been tremendous public interest in mindfulness and meditation, which coincided with our dialogues and our research. So while Mind and Life is certainly not solely responsible for this shift, we know that it would not have been possible without the scientific foundation that we helped to create. So we're pleased with our contributions over the last 33 years, and we're ready to continue forward for decades to come. And as we began this process, we asked ourselves what every organization should do from time to time. And that is there more for us to do? And after real thoughtfulness and looking inward, we found that the answer was a resounding yes, there is more for us to do. And in light of today's crises, this rings truer than ever. So at this moment in history, we may be experiencing unprecedented levels of physical isolation from one another. But we know that the sense of disconnection has been building for much longer. We see this wider ongoing crisis of disconnection as the root cause of today's most pressing challenges. We see it at individual levels, like growing levels of anxiety and loneliness, rising levels of depression, bullying, the extreme level of suicides and mass shootings. And we also see it at the collective level, in deep division, in politics, healthcare, climate change, and immigration. So in this pivotal moment in human history, we feel called to offer a bold vision to bring humanity together. And our legacy provides a foundation for us to be well poised to meet this moment of challenge with a vision of transformation. Next slide. Because we see disconnection as the root of so many critical challenges in today's world, we believe that the solutions lie in understanding how human minds can bring the world together. And so you may ask, are we fundamentally changing what Mind and Life does in favor of an entirely new direction? And the simple answer is no. But what we are doing is we're building upon our strengths and expanding our mission because we want to have an even greater impact. Next slide. So to achieve the greater impact, we're holding this vision. We seek absolute individual and societal transformation toward a world that embraces our shared humanity. And it's an ambitious vision, but it feels urgent, and it feels like just the right horizon we all should be on in this journey. And so the vision, then once we had this vision, it then called upon us to re-examine our mission. And in our re-examination of our mission statement, we found that we wanted to maintain the best of our legacy while having a stronger commitment to action. And so here's where we landed: bridging science and contemplative wisdom to foster insight and inspire action toward flourishing. And that's individual flourishing, societal flourishing, and planetary flourishing. So I'll pass it on to Wendy to unpack this a little bit more.
Thanks, Susan. So it's wonderful to be here with you all today. Thank you so much for joining us. So our first step in delivering on our mission is really grounded in inquiry, and that's been at the heart of our organization since the beginning. So now, in light of our new strategy, we want to expand how we're approaching inquiry in light of these deep divisions and disconnections that Susan was just mentioning. And Mind and Life has always been interested in asking big questions, particularly around understanding the human mind. And so now we want to know how our minds might contribute to and also might help solve these problems of disconnection. So through our strategic process, as we've surveyed the scope of work that's been done in the field so far, we've seen a number of areas that we feel are going to be important to advance. And so I'll just share a couple of those here. One is that the majority of the work that's been done has been focused on outcomes for the individual, outcomes of contemplative practice for the individual who's practicing. And of course that makes sense as a place to start, but we also know that the benefits and effects of these practices can ripple out into our relationships and even into society. So we think it's going to be really important to expand the scope of our inquiry to include more of these interpersonal and societal types of outcomes. Another area that we feel is really important relates to a basic way that our minds function. And so we know that our brains are naturally inclined to categorize everything in the world around us, and that includes people. And when we categorize people, one way that we can do that is to artificially lump them into one of two big boxes that we could call self, that is me or those like me, or other, being everybody else. And when we categorize people in this way, it can fuel negative emotions like fear and anger and hatred, and it can move us further away from the reality of our interconnection. So we feel that increasing our understanding of these constructs of self and other and how they're formed in our minds and how they might be shifted is going to be really critical in this time as we move forward. So what does this mean for Mind and Life? Well, we've created what we're calling a lens of inquiry, and this will help to center and focus all of the work that we do and the research we support. And this really is centered on the idea of our interconnection and the ways that it can be obscured. So as Susan mentioned earlier, disconnection can show up at individual and societal levels. And at the individual level, this can show up in experiences like depression, anxiety, loneliness, addiction, certain kinds of trauma. And at societal levels, we see this in forms of othering, like racism, sexism, tribalism, all the various isms with which we're unfortunately so familiar today. And so overall, we want to understand how our minds can end up end up in these states of disconnection and othering, and how contemplative practices might be used to transform our minds toward more states of interconnectedness and states where we can really embrace our shared humanity. We also know that insights alone are not enough, and so we really want the knowledge that's being generated in this field to move out into the world and be able to inspire action. And we see a number of sectors and domains that we feel are really rich for integrating these types of insights. Areas like education, like mental health, isolation and loneliness, social and political divides, and even climate change. And in all of these areas, we can share the insights that are coming out of this intersection of science and contemplative wisdom to inspire action on the ground in these domains. And by doing this, we want to help create a world where we can feel genuinely connected to one another. We can approach our differences with compassion and curiosity instead of fear and suspicion. And where we can realize that while we are all different, we can also begin to see ourselves in one another. So with that, I will pass it back to Susan.
Thanks so much, Wendy. So once we determined the change we want to help create, our next task was to define how we would make that happen. And so with that in mind, we created a plan to move our insights from academia to action through our theory of change. And so let me walk you through that. So our role starts with what we've been doing for over 3 decades. We bring disparate fields and areas of expertise together. And we've always brought together contemplative wisdom and research and scholarship. And today, to deliver on our expanded mission, we are bringing in a third element, and that's real-world application and action. And so we welcome, support, and convene those who sit in these shared spaces. And it's that overlap of interest and expertise of the 3, contemplative wisdom in a broader sense, research, which includes humanities and science, and then action in different dimensions of applied sectors. It's that central piece that is Mind and Life's sweet spot now. But what we're doing is more than bringing people together. We're deliberately creating unique learning exchanges. And the findings from interdisciplinary research are brought together in rich inquiry, in dialogues in new forms, both digital and in person. And this is how and where insight is truly fostered and inspiration for action begins. And so whether in person or online, we are engaging in ways that step outside the traditionally siloed areas. And we're looking to build bridges, welcoming diverse perspectives and backgrounds and voices. And it's this diversity of perspectives that yields and will yield richer results. So we see tremendous opportunity in taking the insights from academia and getting them into the hands of those who can affect change in critical areas and on critical issues. And so this is where Mind and Life is going to play a role in curating, packaging, and sharing content, our content, in ways that can reach wider audiences. And it's really important to note that an important part of our sharing curated content is to minimize hype and sugarcoating. And we are going to, and what we do is to thoughtfully explore what is known, what is unknown, and leaning into nuance and complexity of science, of contemplative practices, and of real-world application. And so to have a wider reach and greater impact, we'll engage people and organizations that can benefit from and amplify the learnings of Mind and Life's research and conversations. And we want to do that with those who have bigger platforms and broader access than we can have alone. So taken together, this is how we will promote individual and societal flourishing. And this means fostering a new realm of understanding of how interconnection is tied to human flourishing through the lens of inquiry that is woven throughout, which guides and shapes our focus and underpins all that we do. And we're bringing our past successes to bear in this new area of insight, and we're sharing our work in a way that has real impact in people's everyday lives. And this is how Mind and Life will help build the world that we want to live in, where we all embrace our shared humanity. So our theory of change illustrates where Mind and Life fits in the big change that we envision. And now, how will we put that theory of change into practice? And to answer the question, we entered into a thoughtful strategic planning process oriented toward building our capacity to deliver on our vision. And we created a strategic framework that maps out how we're orienting our organization and building our teams and prioritizing our work. So the strategic planning process began first by deeply looking at our values. What values will we need to lean into in order to expand our mission moving forward? And our team agreed that these values here are foundational to our work. So let me walk through and explain what each one means to us. So integrity, we commit to be consistently equitable, trustworthy, transparent, and respectful. Curiosity, we explore with a sense of humility and courage, embracing the innovation and creativity that comes out of the unknown. Compassion, we aspire to relieve suffering through open-hearted and wise action. Inclusion, in intention and action, we embrace diverse perspectives and backgrounds that enrich our knowledge and broaden our community. And excellence, we seek to reach our highest potential in all that we do through rigor and reflection. And we strive to live, embody, and actively integrate these values every day in our work. So with these values in mind, we built a plan for how to put our theory of change into action. And a fundamental part of that was answering how will our organization evolve in order to bring this vision to life. And we realized that there were three critical components to that evolution. So very briefly, first is harnessing that power and the power that comes from strategic planning and capacity building. Next is ensuring that equity, diversity, and inclusion are woven throughout our work. And third is evolving how we generate revenue. And Wendy will now share a few examples of what this evolved work actually looks like. So back to you, Wendy.
Thanks, Susan. So yeah, one of the main ways that Mind and Life tries to foster insight is through our grant-making programs and our support of research. And we will be continuing all three of our grants programs, the Peace Grants, the Varela grants, and the Think Tank grants. And I'll just highlight the Peace Grants here. These are focused on research into these pro-social and positive human qualities that you can see listed under the acronym there, and you can also see some examples of projects that we've funded in the past. So in light of our new strategy, we're updating and reworking the language and the information for all of our grants programs to like the request for proposals and what the applicants will find to really raise up this lens of interconnection. excuse me. And we're already finding that this is having an effect in our most recent round of peace grants. We see more and more of the applications coming in focused on this lens. So we're excited that this is a way that we can help to shape the field moving forward and continue to support this work. And while we're speaking of grants, I also want to mention that we are planning to develop something around research practice partnership grants. And we're not exactly sure how that will look yet. It's still in development, but these are a really great kind of grant mechanism because they require the collaboration of researchers with on-the-ground practitioners. And so this can be really mutually beneficial because it allows the research to respond to and integrate the reality of what's happening on the ground. And that's something that often doesn't happen in research settings. And then also it allows the on-the-ground work to be directly informed by the research findings. So we're really excited about this, and please stay tuned for more as we develop this effort. Another way that we foster insight is through our dialogues and convenings. And Susan mentioned our long history of this. And in light of our new strategy, we want to evolve the way that we create space for people to come together and to learn from one another. So this photo represents the direction that we want to start thinking about, kind of rethinking the traditional conference format where it can be quite top-down and hierarchical and a one-way flow of information that can be impersonal, and developing more ways where we can have true dialogues and learn from one another in a real learning exchange. So one of the places where we'll be exploring these ideas is our ongoing Summer Research Institute. And this is a week-long immersive residential event that happens normally in upstate New York at the Garrison Institute every summer. This summer, we're going to be moving it online in light of COVID. And that will actually give us an opportunity to continue exploring ways that we can use digital platforms to bring people together in unique ways and continue this learning exchange. And when it comes to sharing the insights more out into the world, one way that we are working on that is through what we're calling our digital dialogues. And so we obviously have a long history of dialogues with thought leaders like the Dalai Lama. And now we want to move our way of sharing the insights from that into digital platforms. And so this is called the Education of the Heart Digital Dialogue. This is our most recent effort around this. This came out of a dialogue that we had with the Dalai Lama in 2018 and world leaders in contemplative education to share insights and recent practices in how contemplative wisdom is being brought into educational spaces. So this is a rich multimedia website that incorporates summaries and video highlights and resources from this event. And we're pleased that it's already beginning to be accessed around the world. So we encourage you to check that out. And the last example that I'll share is our new podcast. And so the podcast is called Mind and Life, and this one is near and dear to my heart as I am the host and co-producer of the show. The idea behind this show is really just to give voice to the many amazing people in our community who are doing this work, whether it's in the lab or on the ground and from a variety of different perspectives and disciplines. And really just to hear their insights about how we can better understand our minds and the potential for contemplative practice to increase well-being and also create a more connected society. So we just launched this show a few weeks ago, and we're really excited. There's already been a lot of interest in this type of content, and we have 2 episodes out already, and there's much more to come. So we encourage you to check this out. It's available on all the major podcast players, and we hope that you subscribe and listen and enjoy. And I'll pass it back to Susan.
Thanks so much, Wendy. And I just have to put in a personal plug for the podcast. I think it's really awesome. Wendy has just done an amazing job with it. And the speakers are really, really great. So we've just shared a lot with you. I realize that. And thank you so much again for listening. And just to sum it up here are a few major takeaways. So we're responding to today's crisis of disconnection, division, and discord with a bold vision for change. And it's an evolved mission, but grounded in a solid foundation more than 30 years in the making. And we're asking big questions about how the potential of our minds can be understood and leveraged to bring humanity together, bridging insights from contemplative wisdom and science. Both are so needed at this time of disconnection and othering. So to make that transformation possible, we're expanding our community to be more inclusive. We're fostering learning exchanges and research with an expanded lens toward interconnection, and we're seeking to widen our reach. And throughout our work, we're engaging the brightest minds and the most compassionate hearts to explore fundamental challenges with the intention to effect a societal shift that brings humanity together. So I offer you an invitation to be involved and to be part of this work moving forward. So we're pleased with the work that we've done so far to help build the field of contemplative sciences and the mindfulness movement. And now we're inspired by the opportunity to expand our reach and our impact. And this photo here is a photo from our staff taken very impromptu at one of our staff meetings. And we have an amazing team, a wonderful team, and they all send their best wishes. And we just would love to hear from you. And we just encourage you to reach out to any members of our team with your thoughts and how you might like to get involved. So I'd like to close with gratitude for your time and also with a parting thought in this quote. Happiness can only be discovered as a gift of harmony between the whole and each single component. Even science points to an understanding of reality as a place where every element connects and interacts with everything else. And these words from Pope Francis speak to our mission and our work, and to the expanding horizon we see for including a wider range of contemplative wisdom. So we sincerely welcome you to join us in this journey in whatever way you feel called to, as we move toward a world where we embrace our shared humanity. And now I invite Shankari to come back and share a closing reflection. Shankari.
Thank you, Susan. That was such a beautiful presentation from Susan and Wendy. And I just invite you to come back to a place of becoming grounded, shifting back into your body, your breath, your mind, and once more your heart. And begin to ask yourself that question that we asked at the beginning of this webinar, which was, how do you feel right now? How do you feel now after hearing all of that? Now that we've focused on our future outcomes and we've explored more aspects that we are all one as we globally shift in these times, how do you feel? This ability to become more interconnected truly relies on the help of organizations like Mind and Life. So just take a moment to feel the possibilities. And I'll leave you with this quote today by Arundhati Roy. Another world is not only possible, she is on her way. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing. And I'll add additional to the quote that we can most certainly hear her heart beating. So once more, thank you. Peace, blessings, ashe, much gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shankari. And of course, thank you to Susan and Wendy for that great introduction to Mind and Life's new strategic vision. And to you at home, we are incredibly grateful for your interest in our work. I've loved reading the responses in the chat. There's such enthusiasm, some wonderful questions, and real deep interest in this work. And I just want to underscore the invitation that Susan extended for you to be part of this vision. We need and want you to help us reach this goal. And so you've got our contact information. We hope you'll use it, and stay tuned for more to come from Mind and Life. For those of you who have the time to stay on the call for a few more minutes, we're going to do about 10 minutes of Q&A. I'll share a few of your questions with our team, so together we can continue the conversation for a bit. And most of these questions have come in through the registration form, but I'm doing my best to weave in some of your comments from the chat as we go. So we'll start with a question that I can see is on many of your minds. And it's an important one. The question is, how does Mind and Life's work and vision change in the time of COVID-19?
So I'll jump in, okay? So, what's really, really interesting is, as I said earlier in the presentation, is that we finished our strategic visioning and actually our strategic planning process in January. And the lens of inquiry related to interconnection and our shared humanity was already laid out. It was part of our plan. And so in many ways, our strategic vision, our plan, our mission isn't changing. If anything, what's happened with COVID, it just underscores that we're on the right track and this work is really needed, and we need to continue forward. So I don't see us changing dramatically, except we're steady on. We're really happy with the direction that we're going. And the other thing I'll just mention is that we were already planning to begin to do more digital work. We started that earlier this year, and we even did a reorganization of our staff in such a way that we were putting resources into our digital content and development and strategy. So we feel like we're on track. We're still one step at a time, and we're learning, but we feel like we're ready to help in this time of the crisis that we're facing. So I invite Shankri and Wendy to share anything else that you might have.
Yeah, I can share on the convenings front. We're beginning to explore alternative ways to reach our Mind and Life community. We're going to be offering the Summer Research Institute virtually in the second week of June, which is the first time ever. And we're exploring all options for future convenings, including the Contemplative Research Conference, as we move into the fall, so that we can continue to share the wealth of knowledge that Mind and Life has to offer. So we're open.
Yeah, and just a couple of thoughts. For those of you who follow us on social media, we're continuing to share a lot of resources from contemplative practices in this time. And it also makes me think of on the podcast, many of the initial interviews were recorded before COVID, but the ones that we're recording now, we're always kind of touching on that topic and how the insights that we're learning can be applied in this time. So that's another kind of source of information, a way that we're responding.
Great. And I know that we'll continue to evolve and respond as we move forward. Another question that seems to be arising in different ways and was certainly part of the presentation, it touches on one of the values in particular. I'm hoping that all of you can share your thoughts, or at least some of you can share your thoughts on how Mind and Life is working toward equity, diversity, and inclusion, a little bit more in depth than we got to hear in the presentation.
Yeah,
who wants to go first?
I can jump in.
Okay,
It's my favorite value at Mind and Life. I think the biggest change, or maybe the challenge that I see for Mind and Life, is inviting everyone to be open to the variety of narratives and spaces, and just really accepting Susan's invitation. I think it was really beautiful that she posed it as a question and an invite. And I think it's no secret that many institutions, organizations, social movements, there have been voices that have been dismissed or depreciated. And for our community, that can show up in the contemplative, the research, and the action, and all the avenues that we have here at Mind and Life. So I think the most beautiful thing that I've experienced in my short time here at Mind and Life is that we are truly doing the work of self-inquiry here within the staff of Mind and Life through trainings, dialogues, embodied practices. I noticed somebody brought up addressing systems of power. We are definitely working in dismantling that, and how we plan our convenings and our affinity groups. We really ask the questions of how we can start to amplify all the voices that truly need to be heard. And so I think it's really beautiful that we are doing that work and finding ways to hear how our community and our social justice movements can show up. And most importantly, I really loved Wendy's part of the presentation that she shared, that we want to approach with curiosity and inquiry, how our mind contributes to these societal norms and of isms, and that ultimately links into a modern approach of being in community with one another. So I think we're really on the right path, and we're definitely seeking advice and help and training from people that can bring that support into this community.
Well, thanks, Shankari. You summarized everything really beautifully, so thank you. And thank you for everything that you're bringing to our team and our work and our organization. We're out, just want to underscore, I think some of you who know me know that from the time that I started my presidency, which is now almost 5 years ago, this has been a priority. And when I put it out there that it was a priority, I just knew deep down that if we're trying to do work that matters in the world, and we're trying to really better understand self and other, and to try to create healing and move towards shared humanity, the only way that we could do that is doing the internal work and being able to foster insights that are actually meaningful. And so it's been a journey. It's been, and I'm just saying, I have learned so much. I'm deeply humbled and continue to be, and at the same time, I'm deeply, deeply committed for us to continue doing this forward. I know it's right, and I think that Mind and Life's not only better as an organization and going to be even better as an organization because of our commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion, but actually the impact of what we're doing is going to be even greater as a result of doing it. So,
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you. And of course, diversity of disciplines, though perhaps less charged, is another important component of Mind and Life's approach to this work. And my disciplinary background happens to be the arts, so I especially enjoyed the music that we heard before the call. And I'm wondering, just briefly, if Susan, you could talk a little bit about the role of contemplative arts in our work moving forward.
Sure, just briefly mention, this has also been something I've been really passionate about. I think there are many doorways to contemplative wisdom and contemplative understanding, and the contemplative arts is a wonderful doorway for many of us. And so what we're doing for all of our convenings, in person and digital, we are bringing in contemplative arts as well. So stay tuned for more. And if any of you are contemplative artists and want to get involved, please let us know.
Great. I think we have time for one more question, and it's a big one. So it probably is a good one to end on. How is Mind and Life different from the many other organizations, and I would say increasingly many other organizations in the contemplative space right now?
Wait, Wendy? It looks like you're talking, Wendy.
We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll just share some initial thoughts on that. I think that one of the things that distinguishes Mind and Life and really has from the start is our involvement and commitment to science and research. Many of the organizations in this space are doing great work, but are more focused on the practice side of things. So I think that we have a fairly unique lens in trying to integrate and rely on the science, and also to move the field forward and develop the field. And in that way, I think we're actually the only organization that funds research in this area, the only kind of contemplative organization in this space. So I think that that's a really important avenue from our whole history.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, and I'll just add one last little bit piece to that and say that, the contemplative practices and contemplative wisdom, as I mentioned earlier, in a very inclusive way, we bridge with science, and it's the sciences, across the sciences. And there's the third element that you might recall from the theory of change, which is the action piece, which includes change makers and practitioners bringing the work into different sectors and activists. And so it's really that sweet spot, that middle, that overlap of the three, that I believe makes Mind and Life unique. So it's research, contemplation, and action, and that and the middle of the all together. So
Wonderful. Well, I think we all like to be in the sweet spot, and we hope that all of you out there will join us in the sweet spot, because that's where the magic is going to happen, and we're really excited for the work that we're going to do together. And again, we want to invite you to be part of it. Use the email address that you'll see on the screen if you don't see it already, and let us know what you thought. We will enjoy poring over the chat comments, and we'd like to hear more. And see you again soon, either through the screen or in person, whenever that time comes. Until then, we wish you health, and we want to thank you for being with us today.